and amongst its people. So enjoy it.
Thank you. Can you hear me without the microphone? Yeah? So is it okay if I do it without? Great, because I'm a bit... Thank you. So, first of all, thank you for that lovely introduction, and thank you for coming to visit us. Thank you for inviting us to come here to your beautiful city, and congratulations on doing an amazing project. It's going to be a small revolution here, and maybe a big step for the whole world. Let's see. So we're very proud that you consider us someone you would invite for this. And I also feel a little bit of a pressure, because in the program you wrote that I'm an expert. So I would say, as someone who works with innovation and design thinking, if I'm an expert in anything, it's failing and learning. And it's experimenting and exploring more than having all the right answers from the beginning. So if Thomas promised you, I'll come and give you all the answers. I'll have to disappoint you, but I will give you some perspectives on how we work with innovation, how we work with community engagement and local involvement. And as you can see from this picture, I work a lot in the streets and in the fields and in the garden. I don't work a lot in the library per se. I'm not a librarian, I'm a philosopher, but they've accepted me into their crowd. And in this particular picture, we're building little libraries with homeless people on the harbor front. She's not homeless, she's there looking. But we live and work in the city of Aarhus, and we've been working for quite a while now, almost more than 10 years, with human-centered design and design thinking. And those of you who were at the workshop yesterday already know, and I think all of you who were at this conference know, that design thinking is actually very simple. It's about accelerating innovation to create better solutions to challenges that I think we all share in libraries globally. But it could be any challenge. It can be service design, it can be programming, it can be your space, it can be relations. So actually design thinking can be used for anything. And at the heart of design thinking is a curiosity to learn about the world, to learn about people, humans, and have some ideas. So design thinking offers all these techniques for generating ideas, but the most important thing is actually very quickly to make it real, to test it out. Test something that's not perfect, maybe have a success, learn from that, maybe fail, and learn from that. So our ambition with working with human-centered design was to create a library for people and not for books. So the process started when we wanted to build a new main library in Aarhus. And in this process, we cooperated with IDEO and Chicago Public Libraries. And before the library was born, we had this toolkit made that's shared globally, and you've already translated it, so thank you. And congratulations to all of us that it's spreading. And the process ended up being turned into a new library with lots of sort of imprints from people from the city, because we've been in a constant dialogue for years with the citizens of Aarhus. So while Sitzel, who just entered here, works at Job 1, the main library, she's got all the luxury down there, I work in the 18 branch libraries in Aarhus City. So these are all, Aarhus is a city almost like Brno. What does that mean? We took a while exploring that in one of our libraries in a more problematic part of the city, and they ended up having healthcare and social service and job support. But what does it mean for the rest of the city? Because what we figured out is that there isn't one recipe for being a community center. There are some characteristics that we all share in the branches, which is we're open, not just in our minds, but we're open literally. Anyone can access the library from 7 in the morning till 10 in the evening, but there's no staff. There might be staff just for 2 hours or 4 hours, but the community can enter the library and use it for anything they want, for meetings, for workshops, working there, office. So it's open. We also discovered that in order to be a community center, you have to be flexible and dynamic. You have to all the time try and assess the needs of your local community, and they're not the same. It depends on the demographics, on the geographics, on the situation of the library. But at the core of it, being a community center is human-centered. And it's about being locally engaged, being involved in your community. So we didn't have the process of building a brand new, beautiful library, but we did have the toolkit, and we did have the ideas from design thinking. But we didn't have the time or the resources to always do the full process, like the rest of you tried yesterday. So you go out, you interview people, you observe, you learn about the world, you interview experts, you generate ideas, you create a prototype, you test it. So it's a long process actually if you want to do the textbook design thinking. So we decided we're going to try and massage it into our everyday praxis. The way we work has got to be from the basis of the methodology of design thinking. And we have to use the citizens as a resource, because we're not going to get more resources for becoming community centers. So we have to find a way to co-produce community centers with the citizens. So we started a long row of experiments, and I'm going to show you 3 of them today. And the first one is in a small suburb library in Aarhus, where we started a new tradition 4 years ago. We made something called dialogue meetings, where we invited, instead of going out to interview lots of different citizens, we invited them in new ways. So normally we invite for something through our webpage, and maybe we put up a poster. And the same people come every time. So this time we decided, okay, we'll put up the invitations all over the city, at the dentist, at the pizza, at the pub, at all these crazy places, to try and reach different people. And it was scary for the librarians, because they didn't know who would come, and they only had like a framework for discussing what is the community center for you here. What do you want to use this space, the library, for? But this crowd showed up the first time, and they quickly decided that if they were supposed to be doing their own stuff in the library, they needed a place, because the library didn't feel like it was theirs. They didn't have a place where they could just make a workshop, or they could just make coffee or put things into. So we decided together with them to do a quick and cheap prototype. So this one would have cost, I don't know, I think 500 Czech kronos. This prototype of, they were talking about it as a long kitchen table, like the dining room table where you can do stuff, but you can also have kids doing homeworks at the other end. And then we explained to everybody what's going on here, right on the table. Write your activity, write if you like it, what works, what doesn't work. So it's a simple prototype, there's no rocket science in this. But this is a picture from yesterday from Facebook, from the Creative Club meeting up. And they're doing some knitting stuff, I don't know. But they meet up at least once a week. The language club meets up, the drawing club meets up. We don't do anything. They go there when we're not there. They coordinate it on Facebook, and they've slowly taken in. So they've also designed a different part of the library. And we figured out, okay, we're just going to let them roll with it. And actually now they do a lot of the programming in this library, in this stuff, because citizens, actually after we created this space, they have an open invitation all the time to do stuff. We also tested a method called participatory budgeting, or public budgeting, where you take part of your budget and you give it to someone that you want to create a relation with. So as most libraries all over the world, we want to connect to, oh my God, really? 5 minutes? No, to young people. And so we took a small amount of the budget, we put up these old phone booths, where they could, instead of writing their ideas, they could talk their ideas into them. We did a voting process with them, conceptualized their ideas, and they ended up choosing the cozy corner. And they put up 1/5 of the budget for hot chocolate. It was crazy. We couldn't accept it. The thing was, we did lots of facilitated dialogues with them at their school, and we figured out, we thought that they thought the library was boring. They didn't. They didn't feel welcome. They were afraid of going to the library because a lot of them as kids came into the library and they felt wrong because we told them, you're not learning in the right way, you're all over with your buddy, you have to go over there, you make too much noise. They stopped coming. So actually, the hot chocolate turned into a warm welcome for these kids. And they show up twice a week, loads of them, even too much sometimes. But the thing is, now we can make the programs with them. So we have a dialogue all the time, we have a platform. We do all this stuff exploring platforms. So we also put up the phone booth in a different part of the city. We mapped the community and helped them spread the word to get the ideas out. We had the sports club, we had all sorts of volunteer groups helping us. And they ended up winning this little group of 12-year-old boys to create a gaming corner in a different library. But what we figured out is they're 12, they can't access the library. You have to be 14. So a group of old people said, that's such a shame. They made this really nice suggestion. They won the vote. We'll be there gaming grannies. So we're not doing anything. They're meeting up. And what we hear from the old guys is they've learned so much about gaming culture. They didn't know that it was really interesting. So, really quickly, a third project trying to do something about connecting to young people, and this is where you visited me in the gardens. We took an old caravan and we went around to visit the university, the high schools, the gymnasiums to figure out, before we start doing something for young people, what are they concerned about? What's important to them in their lives? And actually, we visited young people from the age of 15 to 25, and they all said climate change and sustainability. How do we live in the future? We can't read this from a book, we have to practice. 3 minutes, thank you. So, we said, okay, so how do we do that? Because normally we teach people things from books, or we give lectures. So it's a lot of words and paper. We had no idea, really, how to meet this need, except from the fact that we had a garden. We weren't using it, it was just there to look nice. So we thought, why don't we just give it away to them? And let's see what happens. So we decided in this project we will only use recycled materials, we will only swap things, and we had a really small budget. But they started building, a few of them, and then they brought their friends, and then the old people in the neighborhood said, why is this only for young people? Because they're planting everything wrong. Can we help them? So actually they ended up opening up the young people, saying, okay, so if you want to come help us, it's fine. And now we have a community of more or less between 30 and 40 people meeting up there, of all ages. And we're programming in this, so we have activities for kindergartens outside. But actually, what happens is they do most of the programming. So they organize all sorts of workshops on Facebook, and they meet up, and we don't even know. And sometimes they cut down the trees, and we don't even know. So we come, and we're like, what the hell? And it's that guy. He does that all the time. He's like, it's very shady in this corner. I'm just gonna, and then he cuts down. But they do all sorts of cooking stuff now, and pickling, and this is from yesterday where they had a seed workshop, swapping seeds. So we decided, okay, we have to figure out how can we systematize this, how can we train this as a skill. And we decided to create the project Libraries on the Move, to be much more out there, to actually stay all the time in dialogue with our communities, and to help our staff develop the skills. So we talked about that it's really important when you have a team that work with innovation and design, you have to say out loud, I'm good at this, I'm really scared of this, this makes me nervous, but I'm really structured. Or so we decided, okay, we're going to put it out there. The teams talk about what am I good at, what am I afraid of, and they make it visual. We do everything visually, so we don't write project plans. We do timelines on the walls. We take pictures to document. And we try to have our meetings standing up, to have some more energy, because as soon as you sit down, you start. And then we used almost all our funding to buy these 2 babies. This is really scary. Did you try driving one of those? It's like, oh, we had no idea. But to sort of, because up until now, we've been inviting people into the library to talk about how can the library be relevant to you. So we wanted to go outside and meet people where they are and try to be relevant to them out there. And we consider the whole project a prototype. So we're developing all the time. And the librarians and the library staff are training their skills. And they're accepting that this is not perfect. We're just going to have to go out there and do it, but it's not perfect. And then we keep asking citizens, where should we come and meet you? Do you like this feature? We ask them in the library, we ask them on Facebook. So we try to meet people on the platforms where they are. And we all the time train being in dialogue, building empathy, interviewing, but in really informal settings. So when you meet someone in front of the supermarket, she'll be so surprised that you're there. She'll be willing to tell you all sorts of stuff. Not just which book she likes, but where she likes to go on vacations and whatever. And if you bring creative stuff, you'll even get the kids to sit down and you'll have their parents talking for much longer time. So actually what we discovered is that we're turning library into something that it's not something we are, it's something we do. It's an active thing. When you go out and you engage with your community, you work with creating experience and learning, you're doing library more than being library. And we're doing it with people instead of for people. So here's what we learned so far, 5 quick takeaways. Design thinking innovation is not always about having more resources, but it's always about rethinking the resources you have. And considering your space a resource, but also rethinking the roles. It's about giving up the right to define what the problem is. If we kept thinking, oh, the young people, they think we're so boring, we would have never met them where they needed to be met. So we have to give up the right to define the problem and the solution. We have to create platforms in other places than our own. But we also have to use the platforms that we have. I bet that all of you have your library full of people many times a week where you actually have a platform. You have an opportunity to talk to people, and to know more about them. So we have to use the platforms we already have. And then we have to help people participate because they're not going to know. It's also a culture shift for people, for citizens, that we want them involved. So we have to make it easy for them to participate. And then we have to dare to lose control. Like that one. But I'm just going to finish you off with this story because I started with a picture of building the little libraries with the homeless people. So Klaus here, he came to build a library. He was waiting for 2 days. He was getting more and more upset because there was a line of people building. He came back the next day, line of people. Came back the last day. And he said, it's my turn. And he got really grumpy. And then he started telling me that he's no longer homeless. He's living in a social housing place, but he doesn't know anybody. And he's like really lonely. And for him, it's a long way to go to the library, but he'd love to have a library in his house. And he would use it for sharing stuff with people. And he said, so the first thing I'd do is I'd put out half a cup of sugar and I'd see what happens. So that was him inviting us to be a part of his life. So rethink, give up the right to define, create and use platforms, facilitate participation. Dare to lose control. And it really sounds easy, but it's not. So, and I hope you'll follow us and visit us on the Facebook page for the mobile libraries. Thank you. anyone has any questions. If not, they're okay.
I'm sorry.